Hello, my beautiful friends. Great to be with you today, remembering this, that there's nothing new under the sun, but every sunrise is beautiful. Good to be with you today. Today we're going to be talking about boundaries. Yes, all kinds of boundaries, but mainly we're talking about boundaries in personal relationships. So without further ado, as they say, let's see what we got going on here, okay? So we're going to look at maybe 4 aspects to boundaries. One is, how can you tell when you need one? Which is an important question, right? When do you need boundaries? How important are they? What are they? We're going to look at what are they. We're going to look at how to implement them. And we're also going to take a look at some point, boundaries sometimes need to be approached, and what's a good way to do that, and in a respectful way when we're talking about personal boundaries. So I hope that this can be helpful. Again, this is just a conversation about these things. If you're struggling and need help, please get help. There's lots of good help available all over the place, so please do that. So anyway, let's get on to the conversation and talk a little bit about boundaries, okay? Here we go. Okay, so part 1, the story. Well, I always like to start off the story. I think stories are good illustrations, at least one way to look at whatever it is we're talking about. So today we're going to be a little silly in the beginning here and take a look at one scenario in which the boundaries arise or the discussion of boundaries arise and what that kind of looks like in this scenario, okay? So we're all together and there's a group of couples sitting around and they're playing poker with friends. And things are going relatively well. You still have your socks and, kidding there. Anyway, so you're in the middle of a poker game and Dave sparks up and says, "Can you believe that President Palpatine, he's mandating for everyone to start wearing leggings on Monday." And you think, oh my, after recovering from the image of Richard Simmons running around in leotards, you go, Then you start to think, oh boy, here we go, getting dragged into politics. We're having such a good time. And Dave has to go ahead and bring up President Palpatine again. So then you go, Dave, let's not talk about politics here. We're here to have a good time. So I'd appreciate it if we could just leave that aside. And of course, Dave, being the nice soul that he is, decides to let it go. So the game goes on and you have a good time. The limit or this is the boundary that marks a spot where somebody doesn't want to go, that makes them uncomfortable, or whatever it is. This limit helps people work together socially, whether it's in a group, could be a political group, could be a personal group, could be a church group, could be husband and wife, could be just on a date, could be friends, whatever it is. We all have these boundaries we don't like to cross or have people cross, and there are times where we're more patient than other times. There's times where we're willing to do certain things that we're not willing to do other times. Sometimes boundaries are specific to a certain circumstance. Like you may be willing to talk about politics one day, but you're not willing to talk about them at a dinner party or out for a romantic dinner for 2. That may not be optimal time to be talking about politics necessarily. So let's look at the first phase of this, which I call the boundary. As we know, there are all kinds of boundaries out there. If we look at the definition of a boundary, a line that marks the limits of an area. Okay, so there's a line around something, whether it's a house boundary or the lanes going down the middle of the road, or even work versus recreation, whatever. We have lines that we put in things that we do, things that are appropriate work, things that are not appropriate work, things that are appropriate on a date that may not be appropriate when you're talking to your children, or whatever it is. We have all these boundaries. So when boundaries become important is when you start to feel yourself frustrated, annoyed, or you start avoiding somebody, and that's when you have to really start considering, do I need to create a boundary, or have I already created a boundary but they don't know about it and I feel violated because of that? So in order to function together, we need to have these boundaries. So when you're thinking about boundaries and creating these lines, we also have to decide, is it me or is it the other person? Or is it a sensitivity that I have that maybe I need to look at why I'm insecure here? Or is it something that I really feel strongly about and I'm confident that I want a boundary here? So let's take a look at the next step. So after you decide Yeah, I'm uncomfortable and I need a boundary here. I really like this person, want to maintain a relationship, or I have to maintain a relationship with this person as a customer or whatever it is. Then you have to decide, what is the implementation of this? What does that look like? So let's take a look at implementation of a helpful boundary. All right, let's do it. So once we decide on a boundary, it's like we need to create a boundary. And as a more serious example or interesting one is, my kids are really good at creating boundaries with me, and I'm not saying that I listen to them all the time, but they're pretty clear. You know, you're raised by somebody, and at some point you said, okay, you're done raising me, so no more input in certain areas for certain times. And you know, as a dad, you're kind of stepping around these things, trying to figure out where the boundaries are, but you know, you want to respect your children and let them grow and become themselves, and eventually they're so comfortable with themselves that you're on the same level and you're able to share most of your lives together, which is, again, a beautiful thing. They created boundaries based on experience and feelings regarding independence, or independent feelings, independence in all areas. So as with my children, their boundaries were based upon parental control. It's time to get up control, Dad, because we know what we're doing really better than you, and they probably actually do. But so that's one type. Now, if we're talking about boundaries, social boundaries with friends, whether we're talking about politics, I have a close friend that does not like to talk about politics, especially with me, which I think I have perfect political views, but hey, who am I? So this good friend that has these personal boundaries with me about politics and a couple social issues, it took me a while to be okay with that, because a lot of my personality is about getting along. I like to get along with people, and I like to be liked by people. So my thought was, if we don't agree, then we're not really getting along, are we? And so over time I realized that no, we can get along without having to agree on everything. And so I learned to respect these boundaries, and it was a good thing. It taught me two things. One, about examining my own beliefs a little clearer to make sure they're based on something substantial, but also respecting other people's beliefs, which is really important. And I think I always did, but I think that someone being that close to me, not being on the same page and everything, made it a much deeper belief, and it made me a more broad-minded person, if you will. So anyway, so that's one example. I know with clients at work, you know, I try not to get too personal with them. You want to create camaraderie, and I like my clients, but then I don't get too personal with them about what they're doing, and that's just a personal boundary that I put towards them to maintain professionalism. If it goes beyond that and we become friends, well, that's a different story. Well, let's just say hypothetically that one of your issues is you're a very thin person, and people say, man, you're mighty skinny, you really need to gain some weight, which I've heard a lot in my life. And you decided that, you know, this is something I am comfortable with and I really don't want to talk to other people about it anymore, so I'm going to create a boundary. So in creating this boundary, I want it to be clear, I want to communicate it clearly, and then be consistent in making sure that it's upheld, and not taking it too personally, that if somebody gets there, you can have the courage to say, you know, I really don't like to talk about my weight with other people. Or say it's money. I have people in my life where I don't like to talk about money with them. I just say, you know, I'm really not comfortable talking about money. So can we, you know, talk about something else? So communicating these boundaries can be very helpful and very good. Say you're married to somebody that happens to love working out, you know, and they're always about this thing and the next thing and body weight and that. Like, I'm very much like to change my workout routine, and I get really excited about it, and this is the only way to work out, and then next thing you know, I'm doing something completely different, but that's the only way to work out, you know, because I like it and it's fun and it brings me a new benefit when you switch things up. But there are people that don't want to hear about my working out all the time, and then so in that case, I need to be okay with them. And sometimes you can recognize these boundaries just by observation. I mean, you don't have to have them stated necessarily, be sensitive to other people. And that's a good thing. It's good to get along. It's good to be comfortable with yourself, but it's also good to be yielding to other people's feelings and perspectives. So, okay. So implementation is pretty simple. You make these boundaries, and then hopefully other people listen to them. If people don't listen to your boundaries, then you come up with another issue. It's like if they're unwilling to listen. If a mate is, or your partner or whatever is unwilling to listen to a boundary, you know, I don't want to talk about politics or weight, or I don't want to talk about work when I get home. If they keep pressing these issues, then you have another problem, and that's called negotiation. And this, we're not going to get into negotiation in this video, but people change through life. As a teaser to a next video that I'm going to do, that as a person gets older and changes and experience happen, that they do change. And at that time, boundaries change, interests change, and then there's time for renegotiation of the unstated or sometimes stated contract between two people. And we need to do that to get along. We need to be open-minded, open-hearted. We should always want what's in the best interest of the other person and be willing to negotiate these things around their boundaries. And sometimes our boundaries and our growth leads us apart. Sometimes it leads us closer together, and we have to be okay with that. It's can be difficult, but that's another subject for another day. So one last thing I want to talk about in this video: over time and at times, sometimes you want to approach a boundary and have a conversation with somebody about something maybe that they've told you in the past they don't want to talk about, or something that generally is personal. And to approach a person about these things, it's okay, but you need to be respectful when you do this. If they're unwilling to let you approach at all, then there's something deeper going on, and you need to get help with that too. If you feel like you'd like to or need to approach a boundary of the person, you simply need to ask. And you ask in a polite way. Wife, son, daughter, friend, can I give you my opinions or ask you a question about this matter? Do you mind? If you don't, that's fine, I'll let it go, but I had some thoughts I would like to share with you. And that gives an opportunity to say no. And they may say yes, and then halfway through say, you know what, I've had enough, thank you, and I will do whatever it is I want to do with that information you've given me, and let's move on. So when you approach a boundary with somebody or a social boundary, or even a person's yard, you know, you don't just go up and open somebody's front door and walk in. You go up and knock on the door and say, this is Charles, can I come in and, you know, talk to you about this nice vacuum cleaner I have for sale, you know, or whatever it is you have to sell or do. So be considerate, be loving, be kind, be open, and these are all things I'm striving to do, and I think it's a worthy endeavor. Life is a never-ending journey of learning to grow and love, and also be strong, be hardy, and be independent, and yet use your independence to be interdependent with as many people as you feel comfortable with to make this world a better place. So that's my goal. I love you guys. Hope this video was helpful. Again, please subscribe, hit the like button, and even almost more important, hit the notification button, because that'll tell you every time I come out with a new video if you're interested in these. And again, please comment. I love the comments. I don't get many yet, and I would love to see them. And I will try to respond to the ones that I get, because I think a conversation is good, and that's what these videos are about. Conversation with you and me and whoever you want to share these thoughts with after we leave here. Okay? God bless. Bye.